Welcome to part 2 of the xa'isla Handbook. We're going to jump right in here. So this section deals with the vocal tract. So just reading along here. Before learning the symbols, it's helpful to learn how the sounds of a language are made. So when you're speaking, there are things happening in your throat and mouth that you might not even be aware of. So learning about what's going on can be useful. Here's a diagram showing different parts of what is known as the vocal tract. So here is a head. Here's the tongue. We have the lips here, so the bottom lip and then the top lip. You have teeth, so your upper teeth, your bottom teeth are down here. We have a part called the alveolar ridge. That's this part here. It's kind of a bump behind your upper front teeth. We have the nasal cavity. So it's basically your nasal passage. We have the palate, and this is the hard palate specifically. So it's the hard part of the roof of your mouth. Behind that you have the velum. So it's the soft part of the roof of your mouth further back in your throat. Then you have the uvula. It's the little piece of tissue hanging in the back of your throat. Kind of looks like a little punching bag. Then we have the pharynx, which is just basically like the opening between your throat and your tongue and nasal cavity. Here we have the larynx, which is your voice box. Then we have the glottis, which is the opening between your vocal cords. And then the trachea, which is your windpipe. So I call this guy Hank T, which means called Hank. That's the literal meaning of Hank T in the xa'isla language. And it also sounds a lot like Heichti, which means head. So there's kind of a double meaning there behind the meaning of his name. And then continuing on the next page here, the parts that are commonly used in xa'isla are the alveolar ridge, the palate/velum, and the glottis. So these are areas that you might not use very much in English, especially the glottis, the opening between your vocal cords. So that's something that will take some getting used to when you're learning the sounds in xa'isla, when you're speaking the xa'isla language. You're using parts of your mouth and your vocal tract that you're not using in English. So that is something that you have to get used to. The Hayward orthography is separated into vowels and consonants. So that's very important. Let's begin by looking at a map showing vowel placement. So this chart shows kind of the side view of your mouth. So this is the front of your mouth where your teeth are. This is the central part of your vocal tract. This is basically your palate, your hard palate here. And then this is the back towards the uvula. And then here we have this top line, this top horizontal line it basically shows tongue position, like the top of your tongue. With these kinds of sounds up here, the top of your tongue is going to come towards the top of the roof of your mouth. This one you have kind of a middle position, and this line here you have a kind of a lower position, and then down here you have the lowest position, which is like the bottom of your mouth. So you have the letter I. Something else you're going to need to get used to is the letter I never sounds like I, like it does in English. It never sounds like kit or bit or sit. It always sounds like E. So that's something you really need to kind of adjust your thinking to and get used to. So this is a very high sound. It's towards the front of your mouth. And your tongue kind of comes up and pushes forward a little bit. E. So a regular I says E. It can make another sound that we'll look at a little bit later on. But when you see a regular I, more often than not, it's going to sound like E. And then back here we have the letter U. In this position, it sounds like ooh, ooh. This one was a little bit difficult to figure out how to represent. So I put an apostrophe in front of this I. And this is something that signifies what's called a retracted vowel, a retracted I. So a regular I sounds like E, it's a very high sound. A retracted I sounds like A. So E, A. E is a high sound, high front sound. A is a little bit lower. In the middle we have a regular E. This is also known as a schwa, and it has the most variations in sound of all the vowels. So letter I can make two different sounds, the letter U can make two different sounds. The letter E, the schwa, can make up to 4 different sounds. So the most common one is like in the word but, or hut, or cut. And that's something else you need to get used to. A lot of people see the letter E and they think of E sounds, like in English, but it doesn't sound like E at all. It sounds like more often than not. Then we have the retracted U, which sounds like O. So regular U sounds like oo. Retracted U sounds like O. Oo, O. E, A. So you need to remember that when you're reading xa'isla words. Reading xa'isla, you're really going to be concentrating on the vowels. The vowel sounds are the most important parts of reading when it comes to reading the xa'isla language. The consonants are very important too, but the thing is that the consonant sounds will always sound the same, but the vowel sounds will change depending on the consonants that are around it. Underneath this retracted U, we have the letters A and U together. So this is a vowel combination, and it sounds like O. So it's not O, and it's not ah, like down here. This is an ah sound. So it's not O like this retracted U, and it's not ah like this regular A. It's kind of in between. It's more like oh, oh. Then we have another vowel combination here, AI, which is a little bit lower and towards the front of your vocal tract. This sounds like eh. It always sounds like eh. It does not sound like a. A lot of people misinterpret that and mispronounce it as a. It never sounds like a. Apostrophe I sounds like a. AI sounds like eh. Like the English words met, pet, bet, set, get, and so on. It always sounds like eh. So that is something you need to adjust to. Then we have another vowel combination here. We have a double A, and it's very similar to the regular A. It sounds like ah, but it's a longer sound. The double A doubles the length of the sound. So ah, 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 ah. So the double A is a long ah. The single A is a short ah. And down here there's a note where the apostrophe in front of a vowel means that it's retracted. So I'll explain that a little bit previously. So now we're going to go to the bottom of page 8. So this chart represents a side view of the inside of your mouth, which I just explained. So the letter I makes an E sound, which is a high sound coming from the front of your mouth. The letter A can make 3 sounds altogether. And we'll take a look at some xa'isla words that use different A sounds as examples. In its main form, it sounds like ah, as in ball, like the English word ball, as in to cry, which is a low sound coming from the back of the mouth. So this A is the lowest sound of all the vowels. E is the highest sound. So E is a high sound coming from the front of your vocal tract. Ah is a deep sound coming from the back of your vocal tract. It's low and it's towards the back. So the main difference between vowels and consonants is that vowels are very open sounds. There's not a lot of restriction happening in your vocal tract, whereas consonants usually have some kind of constriction happening, some kind of obstruction in the production of the sound. So now going down to the next page. Let's begin by looking at the A vowel and the combinations involving A. First, you'll see the vowel, then a xa'isla word with that sound in it. Then the definition of that xa'isla word. And last, you'll see an English word with the vowel sound in it. So you'll see it's hard to find English words that have xa'isla sounds in them. I did the best that I could. So I found words that have English words that have xa'isla sounds in them. And they start with a B and end with a T. So the first vowel is A. The first example is al-kia. Al-kia. So you listen to this A, it sounds like ah. Al-kia. And this word means to stop. And the closest equivalent sound in English is found in the word bat. So al-kia sounds like bat. The next example is k'ala. K'ala. So we're looking at this first A, and it sounds like ah, and the meaning of the xa'isla word is to know. K'ala means to know. And this first A sounds like bot, makes an ah sound like the English word bot. And the next example is anise. Anise. So this A sounds like ah. Anise means ant, and this A sounds like the English word but. Ah, but, anise. So al-kia sounds like bat. K'ala, the first A sounds like bot. Anise, the A sounds like but. Then we have the double A. The example here is chach. Chach. And this means raven. And it sounds kind of like bother. It's a longer ah sound, like bother. Gach. Bother. So we had the ah sound in k'ala, but if you listen closely, this one is a shorter ah. K'ala. And this is gach. The double A makes it longer. Then we have AI, and the example here is meh, meh, and this means what? And it sounds like the English word bet. So meh and bet are similar in sound. Then we have AU, and the word here is op, op. So you notice that I'm saying op. It's not op, it's not op, it's op. And op means father in xa'isla, and the closest word that I could think of is boat. But again, it's not exactly like that. So this is an O sound, boat. This is aw, op, op, boat, op, boat. So listen for the difference. It's very subtle, but it's there. You should be able to hear a difference. So the AU always sounds like O. It doesn't sound like O. So the double A is like the regular A, but is held a little longer. The letters A, I together are often misinterpreted as the A sound in the English word bay. So I mentioned before, A, I sounds like eh. It does not sound like A. But it's more like the eh in the English word bet. So eh, bet. The AU combination sounds like the O and boat, but not exactly. O is actually a lower sound. O. O is a higher sound. Op. So that's the difference between AU and the O sound. Here's a note down at the bottom of the page. You see this symbol, which is like a slanted dash. And this is called an acute accent. It is placed over vowels. That's very important. It's only on top of vowels. You will never see an acute accent. You'll never see this symbol on top of a consonant. If you do see it, then it's incorrect. The correct use of the acute accent is on top of vowels only. And they're placed over vowels to show where you place emphasis in a word that has more than one syllable. This is also very important to keep in mind. So, in a word like gach, there's no accent marker here because gach has only one syllable. Gach. There's no accent mark in meh because it's one syllable. There's no accent mark in op because it's one syllable. But you do see them in these three words here. Alkia, kala, and anis, because they all have two syllables. So you only see accent marks over vowels, never over consonants, and you only see them in words that have more than one consonant, or one syllable, I should say. One syllable words will have will not have an acute accent in them. So for alkia, you'd say al-kia. So you're starting with a higher pitch, al-kia, al-kia. So watch my hand, it shows where you're placing emphasis, al-kia. Because the accent is on the first A in the first syllable. Accents only go over vowels, not consonants. And try not to confuse. I lost my place here. Something happened with my mouse there for a minute. So try not to confuse accents with apostrophes. They have separate functions and are not interchangeable. So that's also a very important point. All of these symbols have specific jobs. They have certain specific functions. So if you look at this word alkia, you have an apostrophe, and then you have an E with an acute accent on top of it. So I always use Times New Roman. That's the font that I always use when I'm typing the xa'isla language. And the reason for that is because an apostrophe in Times New Roman looks like an apostrophe. So if I zoom in more here, look at this apostrophe. It has a round head and then a kind of a curled tail coming down. Compare that to this acute accent, which is just basically like a wedge or kind of a slanted dash. I like the Times New Roman font. It is the standard font for typing xa'isla because it differentiates between symbols. So again, you have an apostrophe on top of the Q. It looks visually distinctive. It looks visually different than the acute accent on top of the vowels, on the vowel following it. So I'll zoom back out a little bit here. So those are important points. They are not interchangeable. That's also a very important point to keep in mind. let's look at the next set of vowels. So here we have E. I mentioned before that E has 4 different sounds, so it can sound like the sound here in Hamsa. Hamsa. So it's Hamsa. Some people might look at this and try and pronounce this E like an E, but that would be incorrect. It's not Hemsa, it's Hamsa. Hamsa. And this means to eat. So this E sounds like the in but. Hamsa. But. The next one here, the next sound that is made by the letter E is like in the word bukwus. Bukwus, which means wild man of the woods. And it sounds like the in book, the English word book. Bukwus, book. The next example here is Gildala. Gildala. So this E sounds like I. That's because it comes after a G. G and E sound like G. So again, this is not G. It's G. Gildala. And Gildala means long river. And this E here sounds like bit in English. Gildala. Bit. The next example here is tuyu. Tuyu. In this case, the E kind of copies the U sound from the letter U here. So the letter E is kind of like a chameleon. It can take on different sounds that are around it. So since there's an U sound here followed by a Y, the E kind of takes on the same sound. So tuyu means dried, and this letter E sounds like the word boot. Tuyu, boot. And I mentioned before the letter I by itself sounds like E. So the example here is geeg. Geeg. And this means tooth. So this I sounds like beat. Geeg. Beat. And a regular U sounds like U as in duhwa. Duhwa, which is stinging nettle. So this U sounds like boot in English. So the letter E is what is known in linguistics as a schwa. It doesn't actually have a sound of its own. It can change depending on what's around it. In its purest form, it makes an sound like as in but. So I kind of call this like the default sound. The default sound of the letter E in xa'isla is just like the default sound for I is E. The default sound for U is U. The default sound for A is and so on and so forth. One unique characteristic that the letters I and U have, I'm not sure what happened here, there's a typo. One unique characteristic that letters I and U have they have regular sounds. I think I'm gonna have to fix that. The sentence doesn't quite make sense here. But they also have retracted sounds. So they have regular sounds and they also have retracted sounds. So this means that if there's a certain letter or symbol in front of it, that letter or symbol causes a change in the sound of the letters I or U. So that's something that, again, is going to take some getting used to when you're first starting to learn to read xa'isla. So here are two examples of retracted sounds. So we have a retracted I. It doesn't always have to have an apostrophe in front of it. It could be a certain consonant but this was the easiest way to differentiate it from a regular I. So I put an apostrophe there. So apostrophe I sounds like A, as in xa'isla. So you'll notice we have two I's in this word. So we have an apostrophe followed by an I. That sounds like A. Then we have another I here. This sounds like E. So xa'isla. The first letter sounds like A. The first I sounds like A. Second I sounds like E. And xa'isla means eagle. Also pay attention to the I, the first I. It has an acute accent on top of it. So what does that mean? It means we place emphasis on the first syllable. So it's xa'isla. Xa'isla. I do hear some people say xa'isla. That's not the proper pronunciation. It's xa'isla. The emphasis is on the first syllable. So xa'isla is eagle. The closest equivalent in English for this sound is bait. Apostrophe A, or apostrophe E sounds like A. Xa'isla, bait. Then we have apostrophe U, and the example here is oatmus. Oatmus. And this means big, and this word has the closest equivalent in English, which is boat. So this actually is an O sound. So oatmus, boat. And as I mentioned before, the apostrophe is only one example of a symbol that can cause retraction in I or U. It's used as an example here because it's the most common. So that's another reason why I used this apostrophe to signify retracted vowels. The full list of letters that can cause retraction are as follows. So there's, this is called a G bar. It's a deep G sound, like G, G. H sounds like, in English, H. And then you have an apostrophe P. This is kind of a popped sound. And it's also important to note that this only happens with I. So if you have an apostrophe P followed by an I, it sounds like A. Whereas an apostrophe P followed by a U still sounds like oo. The U doesn't change. The oo sound stays the same. We have a regular Q. We have what's called an ejective Q. So it's a Q with an apostrophe on top of it. We have a regular T. Then we have an apostrophe T. So Q sounds like k, k. It's a deeper kind of K sound. Apostrophe Q sounds like k, k. It's kind of a sharper, harder sound. Regular T sounds like t, t, as in English. And then an ejective T, apostrophe T, or as I like to call it, apostrophe T, sounds like t, t. Then we have an X with a line on top of it, so this is an X bar. It sounds like h, h. It's a deeper X kind of sound. And then we have the apostrophe. And another note here, xa'isla words never start with vowels. So you'll always see an apostrophe in front of a vowel if it's at the start of a word. So an example here is oatmus. So you notice it starts with an apostrophe. The apostrophe comes first, and then the letter U comes afterwards. So it's apostrophe U because it's at the start of a word, not oatmus like this where there's nothing in front of the U. So the apostrophe has many functions. At the start of a word, it's standing in as a consonant in front of a vowel. So since we can't start xa'isla words with vowels, we put the apostrophe in front of it because it's considered to be a consonant, but it doesn't actually have a sound to it, a sound attached to it. So let's switch to my webcam here. So that is part 2 of the xa'isla handbook. So join me for part 3, which will be coming soon.